Welcome back to Dham. Remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss the latest videos. Now let's dive into Chapter 2 of Cranium, and trust me, you won't want to miss a second of it. Busaya sighed for the umpteenth times today. Missing the joy of her post-graduation life after her sleep-deprived classes was bad enough, but having to share the tent with Phinya was a whole new level. Like her karma was catching up to her. She didn't see her as a friend, but not an enemy either. Karma was a relative term. Bua lingered at the label attached in front of the big green rain and sunlight-proof tent for their accommodation, located about 200 meters away from the incident. Among the 8 tents, Bua's had a name label read Dr. Busaya Maitin, printed on a white paper covered in waterproof plastic. But what bothered her was the label underneath hers, Dr. Phinya Tananat. Considering the title, it seemed Phinya did graduate after her last tantrum throwing followed by her disappearance. And no one ever heard of her again. Phinya specialized in the same field as Bua, namely physical anthropology. But the professor often had her out in the fieldwork, especially in the area where archaeology and civilization discoveries were made. That gave Phinya added experiences in historical human civilization. Busaya sighed, feeling defeated to her fate before she heard footsteps from behind her to passing her. Finya's shoulder latched with big luggage deliberately bumped into Bua. She wished she could stick out her feet in Finya's way to faceplant her, but she held herself back. You've been gone for so long, and you're still not anywhere the mammals with backbones, vertebrates, aren't you? Have you any manners? Surely Bua did not trip her, but she could give a piece of her mind. Phinya swiftly turned her head back to Bua, eyes burning with anger. She reached for Bua's lapel, but Bua slapped it away. It seems your mouth is as smart as your educational qualification, Dr. Bua. A smirk appeared on Finya's mouth before her eyes are fixed on Bua's lips. Be careful with that pretty lips. Maybe someday they'll find some upper limb, arms and hands of inferior animals attacking them. Then she turned back. I'll take the bed closer to the entrance. You sleep inside. It was an arrogant command, not a request. Bua shook her head before crouching down in front of her tent. Her hands picked up a handful of soil, and she focused on her prayer that everything should be fine before she let the soil slip from her hands slowly. It was her manner of seeking permission from the local guardian spirit before working or resting somewhere new. Yet it seemed luck wasn't on her side. Phinya showed up again and walked past her. I'm getting dinner, Lotus Pearl. Phinya taunted her by a nickname she came up with since their university. She walked away from the area without looking back. Bua decided to keep the response to herself, not prolonging the drama. It'd only waste her time and energy if she did. This was Phinya. Her temper was unpredictable, like a lunatic or someone whose frontal lobe had yet reached its mature point. She lacked the ability to assess logic and reasons. She listened to no one, all stubborn and whiny. When she saw Phinya heading to the temporary cafeteria, Busaya entered the tent to arrange her sleeping bed. Sleeping was her favorite activity. It wasn't much on their first day, yet the staffs made it harder for her by bringing all the bones piling up as one. Busaya almost had a stroke upon the sight. She rushed out to inform them to leave the deceased as they were in the incident and fixed the bamboo sticks as labels, followed by a tape separating each body. This would make her work much easier and faster to identify each victim than having them piled up for her at once. Even separating left from right side of the bone could be a dilemma. Yet the ones piled up must be separated into categories and recalculate from how many bones each victim's had. From then on, the program would help with the measurements and appearances to compare with the personal history of each victim to identify whose they were before verifying all the bones to handling them over to the police. All the passengers, details were being collected for the teams as soon as possible while the Department of Deviation worked against time, searching for the black box in order to uncover why the plane ended up a debris. During their work at noon, as Bua talked back and forth with Phinya, she learned the plane suddenly lost contact and dropped off the radar. It was found again when the locals made a distress call on a loud explosion. When they arrived at the scene, They found the wreckage of the plane and the scattered remains of the victims all over the area. Fortunate enough, there were no further casualties, or it would have been worse. Now, every teams were working against the clock to find the cause of this incident. But what caught Bua's interest was why Phinya made her appearance now. But whatever, it wasn't her business or place. Whenever she showed up, it'd be best to stay away. That thinking made Bua exhale. It was a puzzle why Dr. Phinya was so up against her. Dr. Nisara wasn't any unfair, but if she was, Bua thought she was fonder of Phinya than her, by how she often sent Phinya abroad for field works. Speaking of which, Phinya did pack a lot of fieldwork experiences, much more than her. Though she had just turned 34 just like Bua, Phinya had been through everywhere, be it dangerous route or perilous journey. So why did she bother so much by someone ordinary like Bua? Then again, there was no good explanation, only a headache. Bua decided to shower before her dinner, so Phinya would be back in the tent first. She was afraid of losing her appetite after seeing Finya's face. And once the sunlight was out, the weather would turn a bit cooler. The slight breeze would help her sleep better. Busaya knew her work here was a long way ahead. Yet after her shower for the first time of the day, Bua didn't go to the cafeteria as intended. A staff wanted me to hand you this meal box, probably because you keep stalling and the cafeteria's closing. Also, the briefing's postponed to tomorrow morning. Bua's eyes shifted to the voice. Its owner sat on the canvas bed before she noticed the meal box with 2 bottles of water on her bed. Next to them was her name tag for her operation here. Then, Phinya started unpacking as Bua grabbed her meal box and stepped outside. She meant to find somewhere quiet to eat and rest before she started the work tomorrow. Victims' identification was a tough job, especially in this case where the victims' bodies scattered all over the places from the explosion, impact, and fire. Undeniably, not all of them could make it home. In other words, not all of their parts could be discovered and returned to their family for religious rituals. Some victims may be too damaged beyond identifying. Bua estimated about over 2 weeks to work on it. Despite that, she prayed her work progress faster just so her days with Phinya was over soon. She was afraid that if she spent too much time with her, she would lose her wits, or worse, go insane. Seeing this female doctor frenemy was an energy drain. It had been that way since back in their university days. Every day, hearing Finya's voice was displeasing. Maybe that was another reason why their advisor sent Phinya abroad so often. Even their peers envied her. But it was understandable even to Bua that Phinya was talented in that field, and their advisor was well aware of it. This country has way too few decent anthropologists, with low payment and tough job. No prestige, and the field of work was so unknown to most. The work was done behind the scenes, literally. In the case where this incident happened, the victims left behind their carcasses, damaged skeletons of what was once their bodies, or even just some bones left. Nobody cared about the victims' parts, but they did. Those bones were like anthropologists' cadaveric studies. It got them excited to see the ancient humans or primates ape, which classified as distant relatives of human evolution. In fact, a few had seen it until Dr. Nisara realized the importance of collecting human remains from earlier and later eras. Then she saw to the establishment of the Anthropology Research Institute, which was a joint institution between the public and private sectors, with budget support from both inside and outside the country, with Dr. Nisara herself as the first director. At this research institute, numerous genuine skeletons and replicas were compiled for the students and those interested. The professor worked hard to bring about this institution. Bua came to assist her work as a student and took on the responsibility of overseeing the project, plus participating in research and helping in classes as an assistant instructor. This day, she came here on behalf of her mentor. Yet, it didn't mean her teacher found her endearing more than anyone else. Busaya came out of her tent. She didn't want to argue with anyone, so she looked for somewhere quiet to have dinner. The later it got, the cooler the weather became. Bua felt like she was taking a summer break. However, the plane debris and the victim's parts brought her mood down. The sound of footsteps from the side alerted Bua, who leaned back under a 78 meters tall rubber tree. She turned to look and sighed upon seeing who it was. Page 9. Don't! I'm tired and sleepy, Busaya said to Phinya, who stopped in front of her. Give me a break. I can't argue with you right now. Just here to tell you to keep an eye out. Can we not do this right now? She slowly picked a spoonful of dry stir-fried mixed vegetables with rice into her mouth. Her day of fatigue worsened the taste. Her appetite completely gone, and her brain wouldn't process enough to fight with Phinya. That's all I need to tell you, Phinya said. Don't stay out too late. That brought a frown on Bua's face. With that said, the seemingly good Samaritan left. Busaya's eyes followed her, but it was too dark. Bua remained seated for a while after finishing her meal. This was her first time leaving the Research Institute building after graduating a few months earlier. This was an eye-opener despite it being an urgent duty assigned by her professor. The only thing displeased her was the unexpected meeting with her old frenemy. She had no idea who got Phinya here. She didn't think it was her advisor, else she'd have known. But maybe it was a surprise? Who knows? But one thing she found slight relief in was that with Finya's experience, her contribution would speed up the work. Whoever got Phinya here knew what they were doing. If Bua were to think of one expert in anthropology outside of the Institute, it would be Phinya. Everyone else at the Institute was running around, busying with setting up and their workloads. Hopefully her former classmate wouldn't upset her too much. Bua sat there for another 10 minutes to meditate, then decided to return to her tent. She needed to wake at dawn to start work the next day. For the first night, she prayed her first field work as an anthropologist went smoothly, but it seemed like she might be wrong. And there you have it, Chapter 2 of Cranium. The tension is building and the mysteries are only getting deeper. Why is Phinya really here? Can Busaya solve the case before everything crumbles around her? If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give it a thumbs up, drop a comment below, and share your thoughts. What do you think Phinya is hiding? And don't forget to subscribe to Dham for more thrilling chapters, and stay tuned. Chapter 3 is just around the corner. Trust me, things are about to get intense. See you next time, and thank you for joining me.